act in government terrifies me. They've said on multiple times if they came to power, they would try to get rid of the Zero Carbon Act, the Climate Commission. And Nicola, you've come out and said that you're going to keep the Zero Carbon Act. What assurance can you give that it will be off the chopping block come climate negotiations if you're successful?
Thanks, Nicola.
Well, we're very committed to the Zero Carbon Act. We voted for it as a party for a reason I think is important and that I hope everyone in this room can agree with, which is there are some areas of policy that in order for change to work, you need it to be sustained over successive parliaments, be they blue or be they red. And when it comes to emission reduction, we knew that there needed to be a clear signal to business in particular, to markets and to financiers and to the commercial realm, that it doesn't matter who's in government, you're going to have to get rid of fossil fuels. And that agreement has actually had effect. Some of the greatest decarbonisation efforts are being taken by leaders who are saying, well, we're not going to lend to people who aren't doing enough climate action. We're not going to finance projects that are big on fossil fuels. So we think from a business and commercial standpoint, the Zero Carbon Act is a very important tool, and it's one that we think it's actually sensible, not only from a climate change perspective to support, but from an economic perspective too. Because arguably, the biggest economic reform of our time is decarbonising our economy.
Thanks, Nicola. Greg,
the only reason National signed it was because of Todd Muller, and once he wasn't in the seat anymore, National, you've seen it, they've got deniers there, and also don't forget that also every measure, including the clean car, all that stuff, they've all opposed the whole thing. So don't believe anyone that stands here and says they're committed to anything and oppose every single measure against it. I said it before, I've come into Parliament, probably this was an area I really knew the least about. I've endeavoured to try and find out as much as I can, and I think what we're doing is actually the pace is we are going to be there. I'm convinced of it. I know a lot of people here won't like the BlackRock deal. I've had a look at that. I think that makes sense, and I think it's a lost leader for BlackRock because they know it will work here. They think it can work here, and so they will actually use it for their advantage in the rest of the world, but it'll be a lost leader for them, and I think we will benefit greatly. That and the other New Zealand Steel, Fonterra, those deals as well.
Thanks, Greg. Stephen.
ACT terrifies me too. I think that obviously very different political ideologies and approaches, but I think this election they are also courting some very dangerous anti-democratic elements, and on every current poll, National is going to not just be reliant on them for a couple of votes, but for a huge number of votes. And as we have also said, when Chris Hipkins has tried to rule out Green Party policies being put into action after the election, if we have a, I hate the phrase king-making, but you know what I mean. If we have enough votes that Labour need our votes after the next election, Chris Hipkins doesn't get to rule out our policies. The voters get to decide if Chris Hipkins has to talk to us or if Christopher Luxon has to talk to ACT, and currently on polling, Christopher Luxon's going to have to talk to ACT. So in the same way that Labour constantly get bombarded with, well, which of these green policies do you agree with, as though it's their business, we have to ask the same question of National, and I don't think we can say anything is safe with them having a controlling stake in government.
Martin. What's your policy? What's your party's commitment to the carbon act?
We don't specifically have. Well, we are committed to the carbon act, and as it stands, without too much interference. But once again, our focus is on future-proofing and mitigation. The other side, I mean, all this discussion for the last 5 years has been about changing the climate. And we realised there was so little done on mitigation future-proofing. I mean, the Sponge Cities report written by the Helen Clark Foundation, of all people, was a very good study. And that, like Auckland, when the flash floods came in, they got caught out. And they just stood up publicly and said, stop the intensification now, for good reason. we've got to take that aspect into account. We can't just try to change the climate, because it could take you 20 years. And by that time, we could be in big trouble.
I think your question's a bit about the Zero Carbon Act, but it's also about having a smaller party, having like a really large degree of control over a larger party, and maybe being able to push an agenda that's not...
Pretty words about it.
Okay. May I?
Go.
We've got a problem in our parliament, which is the MMP's not really working the way it was supposed to. What we're supposed to have in MMP is a whole bunch of parties, and you have negotiations, and the parties sort of come together. But at the moment we don't really have a real sort of competition. We've got kind of a duopoly. We've got the blue bloc and we've got the red bloc. And they've each got a client party on the outside, and then you get a party like New Zealand First in the centre that plays the kingmaker and can be the tail wagging the dog. What I'd like to see is more parties in Parliament. Surprise, surprise. If we had a party like Topham there, then maybe a party like National would be able to say, actually, Act, you can't demand outrageous things of us because we have other choices. And then you can have a more reasonable negotiation. So actually, in order to do that, we need top to get in today, we need top to get in this election, but also we need to reform our democracy to make it actually more competitive, so it's easier for more ideas and more parties to get in.